Shakespeare's Mind Behind Macbeth, Chapter 5, Part 1. The Plot, the Bible and Macbeth. Religion is the close relative of all efforts that are done under the sun. And there is no other element that shook the globe either sides and in either ways. It is the greatest friend and patron of the even least low and lonely man. I hope there would not be such a question as what we have to do with the Bible on the aspects of drama. Even before the decent drama is conceived, the seeds of the drama are sowed by the religion only. This particular impact of religion has reached its peaks with a group of rife Shakespeare dramas. Some of the honest critics have taken for granted the impact of religion on Shakespeare as the strongest one. Professor Camille Lawton affirms that no literary criticism which omits religion achieves final truth. The first step to religion is to realize our nothingness before the mystery of the universe. Every one of Shakespeare's characters possesses this elementary form of religion. This is the direct way this professor has showed us the keynote of Shakespeare's characters and their actions in his world of understanding. I quote, "At every chance and change in the great drama, the idea of God is present in his mind. Religion and patriotism are fused into one." Professor Camille Lawton. All human affairs are done around good and bad, and both things are totally linked with the idea of God. And Shakespeare has touched the universe intact, perhaps because of his true relation and fair understanding of God and nature. What about Holinshed and North, which nobody could deny the dependence of Shakespeare on them? I quote, "He paraphrased and dramatized wholesale Holinshed and North. Page after page he turned into scene and dialogue, and by subtle change in the order of the words, he wrought fine prose into fine verse. But his intimacy with these is not permanent and deepening as with the Bible." Edgar I. Priff. My very feeling of Shakespeare is this only. Mr. George Bernard Shaw called him the mere borrower of plots, and many, too, had a slack eye towards Shakespeare in this regard. Was it not known to Shakespeare, and can he write without being branded as mere stealer of the stories? For a fact, it is the first majesty of Shakespeare that he was never bothered what poor critics say, sometimes out of jealousy or to brand themselves as critics, but as a dramatist of the people, to the people, and for the people. He only cared for the true effect that works on the minds of the audience. If Shakespeare should have ever felt for this simple criticism, he could never have become the world's best dramatist. This is but the magnanimity of a true dramatist. Furthermore, the true challenge of a dramatist has really laid in giving the shape and soul to the lifeless skeleton of other plots. This thing I have felt with my own experience too. But look, there are true critics that could smell the innermost layers of core capabilities. Dr. Johnson sets out by describing Shakespeare as having begun to assume the dignity of an ancient, the highest commendation in his eyes. I quote, "Never does he dramatize scripture as Peele does. He had not taken a character from it. Yet his familiarity with the Bible is at least 5 times to that of Peele and Marlowe or any contemporary dramatist." Unquote. Critics have almost excavated this touch with the Bible. I quote, "The Bible he carries in his hand, reads again to refresh his memory, and, reading with new pleasure, he sees and hears what he has not noticed or realized before." Edgar I. Fripp. It is true that the impact of Bible is such to those who finds truth or faith in it. Further, I quote, "The poet's obligation to the Bible is deep. It is not upon the surface. Casual reader may overlook it. In youth and in manhood, he fed on God's word and its tragic stories, its wealth of incident and experience, its sense of wickedness and intense self-consciousness, its searching, scorching veracity, and its magnificent English. And these qualities exhibited themselves to him more forcibly at every stage in his moral growth. Without Bible, he could not have risen to Macbeth and King Lear. Edgar I. Fripp. Most of the critics have never come to this state. No matter whether it is right or wrong, but for those who has touched this line of Shakespeare and the Bible, they are as strong as the influence of the Bible itself is. I quote, "The great majority of Shakespeare's characters live in a Christian atmosphere. Of all the books he studied, none impressed him like the Bible. It is impossible to say which translation he used, but it took possession of his heart, mind and memory, as we see from his style." Camilla Luton. Naturally, Shakespeare's style is a clear proof to show his deep intimacy with the Bible. Anyway, all dramas are not weighed with equal strength, and there is certainly a gradual growth in our dramatist's career. I quote 1604 to 1610. During these years, the imaginative fervor of Shakespeare was at its highest and sustained itself without abatement. In these years, the utmost imaginative susceptibility is united with the utmost self-control. Every portion of his being is at length engaged in the magnificent effort. Edward Dowden. Macbeth has become the world's most enjoyed drama. I don't wage a quarrel between Hamlet and Macbeth to prove their supremacy. In my view, they are not really known to us. And to proceed, I quote, "Macbeth is his greatest work, and the most sublime and impressive in the world." Again I quote, "There is no grander or more original picture than Macbeth." Again I quote, "Macbeth presents one of tragedy's most ample and interesting pictures." Duport. And it is not all. Macbeth, on the other side, was criticized brutally as the weakest drama of all. The so-called faults and problems are as many as we, in counting them, would really forget the greatness of the drama totally. Only thing is that we need to know the truth about Macbeth, which alone could solve all the problems of the play. Here I start to clear the problems, and my way is now to try the plot with that of the Bible, by which it looks as if the problems vanish if I proceed successfully succeeding in this chapter. The plot of Macbeth is greatly praised, even with its clearly seen central idea. I quote, "Macbeth is closely knit, unified construction, every element of which is designed to support an intellectual statement, to which action, character and poetry all contribute. The idea which governs the play is primarily explicit in the action of the central character Macbeth himself. His role is cast into a symbolic pattern which is a reflection of Shakespeare's view of evil operation in the world." Irving Ribner. Again I quote, "As far as Macbeth is concerned, life's tragedy as a whole, wickedness as a factor in human life." George Brandes. Let us turn to the Bible. Why it is written and what does it contain? The Bible is written to reveal the ways of God to man. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Free from what? From sin. And the Bible says all have sinned. And through one man, Adam, sin entered into the world, and death through sin. And thus death spread to all men because they had all sinned. Then what is truth? Jesus is truth, and through the Christ's ransom sacrifice only, people get everlasting life in God's righteous kingdom, in which there would be no sorrow or sin at all. Except the first and last pages of the Bible, the whole time of the Bible is under the power and influence of Satan or sin. The beginning of the play, part of the first page, and the end, last page, which continues forever and forever, are pure without any influence or traces of sin. Glorious times of God. These two times are, in Macbeth, presented with the presence of the sun and its light. We only see two suns, in the beginning and in the end, and the rest of the play is seen and smelt as the hell is murky. In contents, the Bible reveals the past, explains the present, and foretells the future, matters that only He who knows them from the beginning could author. Remember the first things of a long time ago, that I am the Divine One and there is no other God, nor anyone like me, the one telling from the beginning the final, and from long ago the times that have not been done, starting at the beginning by telling the creation of heaven and the earth in the indefinite past. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The Bible then gives a sweeping account of thousands of years during which the earth was being prepared for man's habitation, then created all sorts of living things and creatures, man and from the man, woman. All this is covered in the first two chapters of the first book of Genesis. From here it is around 6,000 years to now, and the end is expected very soon by the Bible scholars. And the system would end, that is, the end of the sin, end of the darkness created by Macbeth even with the death of Macbeth. So the total history of sin should be this period, and if it is so with Macbeth, it should be life's tragedy as a whole. I quote, as far as Macbeth is concerned, life's tragedy as a whole, wickedness as a factor in human life. Of course, he continues, it is not treated firmly and in grand style. Yes, when compared to the Bible, it is very true. I quote, Macbeth presents one of tragedy's most ample and interesting picture, Paul Duport, because perhaps Shakespeare fixed all tragedy in it by imitating the Bible. Macbeth reveals deeper spiritual misery than we have fathomed before. Barent Wendell. Shakespeare made Satan the hero, and the importance is given in showing the darker side of the history. I quote, history in Macbeth is not shown as the grand mechanism. It is shown as a nightmare. John Cott. Again I quote, history in Macbeth is sticky and thick like a brew of blood. John Cott. Again I quote, a production of Macbeth not evoking a picture of the world flooded with blood would inevitably be false. John Cott. Wilson Knight sees in Macbeth merely a poetic recreation of an atmosphere of evil unrelated to any ethical system. But Ribner says, I quote, not merely for the sake of imaginative creation, but in terms of a definite ethical system which the play as a whole is designed to embody, the basic element in a Shakespearean tragedy is ethical idea. And it is this which informs and shapes plot and character as well as mood. Irvin Ribner. Critics had really found this very special note of the whole play, which is never so with any other Shakespeare's drama. Virgil K. Whitaker has finally called Macbeth, I quote, Shakespeare's greatest monument to the ethical system that his age inherited from Western Christianity and the classical world. First phase, creation. Throughout the scriptures, God Jehovah is identified as the creator. God created all things. This wonderful act of creation is hinted in Macbeth. This castle has a pleasant seat. The air nimbly and sweetly recommends itself unto our gentle senses. About the presence of the characters and the setting of the scene, it is appropriately explained, I quote, this is altogether a new and a very impressive rendering of this scene. Anonymous. Again I quote, "In observation, his faculty is microscopical. A wide and extended view of natural scenery he will not portray. What is perhaps the noticeable of all is that in his sketches, incomplete as they are, of natural scenery, he scarcely ever mentions that form of it which is now held as the most enchanting, sublime, and attractive to cultivated minds. Once only in the whole range of his works, unless we should expect some slight reference in Cymbeline, does he introduce his readers to the heart of a wild and hilly region. The allusions to the site of Macbeth Castle happen to be perfectly correct. The wonder is how the writer should have been conversant with such details. Forsyth, I may take this opportunity to say Shakespeare had in his mind and he dramatized the creation. I particularly remember the words of Job, hang the earth upon nothing. This air is altogether different. I quote, the scene with him at its center has an air of love and trust, health and peace, indeed a temple haunting holiness. The castle covers two creations. First creation in the indefinite past. In the beginning God created the heaven and earth. And the next creation of 6 days which follows. I quote, I have begun to plant thee and will labor to make thee full of growing. Indicates the creation of Saturn and the abundant love of God towards Saturn. Angel. Duncan plays the role of Jehovah. I quote, the action of Duncan during the opening scenes share the predominant ambiguous quality. He attempts to engender Eden on earth. As he returns from battle, Duncan assumes the role of the creator. Duncan assumes the role of creator. Herbert Torkerson Jr. No doubt, the actions of Duncan share predominant ambiguous quality. But for the true eye that sees the glory of Duncan, there are all treasures of all sorts packed very tightly. Every action and every word carries more than one meaning and serves the multi-difficult dimensions, having gripped the past, present, and future in a single expression. This wonderful quality Shakespeare attributed to Duncan unlike any other character because his role is that of the creator. The first creation of God is not Saturn, the firstborn of all creation. The beginning of the creation by God was Jesus and was with God in all creation. So Jesus is superior to all others. Here Shakespeare showed it. We will establish our estate upon our eldest Malcolm, whom we name hereafter the Prince of Cumberland, which honor must not unaccompanied invest him only. Shows the character of Jesus and his supremacy all over others besides God. Here one thing is to be noted. The character of Malcolm changes from Jesus to God in the last part of the drama, as observed by some other critic too. This change is frequent in other characters too. It is perhaps uncontrollable on the part of Shakespeare, as this small play has to cover over the big book Bible. Besides that, there is one excuse. It is very much believed in 3-in-1 God Trinity, and also these heavenly bodies happen to change their roles. Saturn is God's kinsman and his place is the nearest, and the signs of nobleness like stars shall shine upon him up to he deserves. Like stars indicate Saturn's assumed name, the Shining One, before his fall. Saturn is a spirit creature. Macbeth says in the battlefield, I bear a charmed life, which must not yield to none of woman born. Bearing a charmed life is created by God, and must not yield indicates the nature of his life God created, and too, I am his kinsman and his subject. Clearly shows us he is a subordinate and strongly picturizes their wonderful relation they had enjoyed before the fall. More than bloody deed, Macbeth is a poor man's fiction to portray the fall and feelings of Satan, a source of true drama, which is not that clearly shown in the Bible. Of course, the device adopted in the Bible to portray Satan is of the value of divine writers, and the cells of Satan's character have been spread and sprinkled all through the Bible, wherever the touch of Satan's existence and exhibition is needed. It is perhaps the grandest way that a character's purpose had ever been utilized to help the reader to straighten his ways through that of all evil stumbling blocks. Here our Shakespeare had done his best. A lively, hellish poetic creation, even with the power of painting a soul of utter destruction. The first thing to be noted is the murder taking place outside the stage. Unlike Banquo's, I have done the deed. What deed? More than bloody deed. And what happened? I could not say amen. But wherefore could not I pronounce amen? I had most need of blessing, and amen struck in my throat. We can see the soul and spirit of Macbeth very clearly and barely. Methought I heard a voice cry, "Sleep no more. Macbeth does murder sleep. The innocent sleep." If at all someone thinks Macbeth has murdered someone outside the stage, it is only the innocent sleep, that to his own. Does Satan sleep? It's a wonderful question. Amen struck when he had most need of blessing. Shows the fool. Of course, this aspect is well discussed by many. Still it cried, "Sleep no more, all the entire house. Glamith has murdered sleep, and therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more." I just remember the predictions of the witches and Lady Macbeth with a voice. That is through the true darkness of the new-hatched healthy devil or evil. The repetition has its need to amplify the show of Macbeth's new dark state. Satan, as we assume, suffered the worst of all creatures of all sorts, and the repeating reminds me of Satan, who had many names, as Saturn the devil, the oriental serpent. We only feel the take-off Duncan and Duncan's grace from Macbeth. Macbeth's black and deep desires here had the deepest consequence. Lady Macbeth too uses the word sleep. The sleeping and the dead are but as pictures. Macbeth further clarifies, renown and grace is dead, and Duncan sleeps well. Further, some critics could observe, as I, the role of God changes to some other characters and continue. This is the first device Shakespeare blessed the play with. Macbeth in murdering thus cuts off the source of his own being. I quote, Macbeth in murdering thus cuts off the source of his own being. Irving Rimbner. The first major aspect of the play Shakespeare carefully presented is in the fall of Satan. I quote, in Macbeth, we see Shakespeare by the mere force of expression making a narrow scene grand and elevated, and raising it to the wide region of imaginative passion. Thomas Kenny. In fact, it is not clearly written in the Bible. It is only indicated. And to a great writer, this particular awe-inspiring event develops curiosity to dramatize the most terrible act, which brings forth the birth of sin, and afterwards with sin death into the world, the ever first act of rebellion and disobedience. No doubt it is in a very narrow scene, and we should accept it as the most powerful one, which had started like a seed, and by expanding it occupies the heavens, and all filthiness gathered like winged creatures and rested in it. We know Milton too had fascinated by this narrow scene and produced much drama and great many images. According to the Bible, sin was introduced first on the spirit plane before it was on earth. For unknown ages, full harmony with God prevailed in the universe. Disruption came through a spiritual creature referred to simply as the resistor, adversary, Hebrew Satan. John says, He who carries on sin originates with the devil, but the devil has been sinning from the beginning. By the beginning, John clearly means the beginning of Satan's career of opposition. John's verse shows that once having introduced sin, Satan continued his sinful course. The death recorded at Ezekiel, though directed to the human king of Tyre, evidently draws upon parallels the course taken by the Spirit Son of God who first sinned. I quote, "And the word of Jehovah continued to occur to me, saying, Son of man, lift up a edge concerning the king of Tyre, and you must say to him, This is what the sovereign Lord Jehovah has said. You are sealing up a pattern, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. In Eden, the garden of God, you proved to be. Every precious stone was your covering, ruby, topaz, and jasper, chrysolite, onyx and jade, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald, and of gold was the workmanship of your setting and your sockets in you. And the day of your being created, they were made ready. You are the anointed cherub that is covering, and I have set you on the holy mountain of God. You proved to be. In the midst of fiery stones you walked about. You are faultless in your way from the day of your being created until righteousness was found in you. Your heart became haughty because of your beauty. You brought your wisdom to ruin on account of your beaming splendor. On the earth I will throw you. Before the kings I will set you, for them to look upon you. Owing to the abundance of your errors, because of the injustice of your sales goods, you have profaned your sanctuaries, and I shall bring forth a fire from the midst of you. It is what must devour you. And I shall make you ashes upon the earth before the eyes of all those seeing you. As for all those knowing you among the people, they will certainly stare in amazement at you. Sudden terrors are what you must become, and you will be no more to time indefinite." Ezekiel. There are critics who had similar ideas about Macbeth. I quote, "Macbeth stands close to royal favor, with the exception of Malcolm. In the potentially redeemable world, his fall parallels that of Lucifer, who stood close to God." Herbert Torkerson Jr. I quote, "The destruction of Macbeth is cast in the pattern of the fall of Satan himself, and the play is full of analogies between Satan and Macbeth. Like Satan, Macbeth is from the first entirely aware of the evil he embraces, and like Satan, he can never renounce his free-willed moral choice once it has been made. It is appropriate that the force of evil in Macbeth be symbolized by Satan's own sin of ambition." Irving Ribner. I quote, "Macbeth's sin, like that of Satan before him, is thus a deliberate redemption of nature, a defiance of God." Irving Ribner. The nature of spirit creature is slightly indicated. I quote, "We see the deeds disintegrating a once noble character, so that the drama is not external but internal. In Macbeth's soul." Matthews. "Oh, horror, horror, horror! Tongue nor heart cannot conceive nor name thee. The quality and quantity is undoubtedly not of human beings, and truly it is about the very first act of disobedience." Further, Macduff explains as, "Confusion now hath made its masterpiece. Most sacrilegious murder hath broke up the Lord's anointed temple and stole then the life of the building. As this is the very birth of evil, Macduff says, confusion now hath made its masterpiece. The ever worst act that is possibly to be done by the evil or confusion. The building here means the earth, and its life is stolen." In the Bible, the earth is spoken of figuratively in several times. At Job, it is linked to a building. When Jehovah asks Job questions that he obviously cannot answer concerning earth's creation and Jehovah's management of it, I quote, "Where did you happen to be when I founded the earth? Tell if you know understanding. Who set its measurements, in case you know, or who laid its cornerstone? Unquote. The earth was fibrous and did shake. I quote. Now the earth proved to be formless and waste, and there was darkness upon the surface of watery deeps. Genesis. How came these waters? When God created it, it was perfect. It was assumed that when Lucifer sinned against God, God's wrath caused destruction. I quote from the play. The earth was fibrous and did shake indicates this. The obscure bird clamored the livelong night. The obscure bird may be interpreted as the remote evil that comes to existence, and it would clamor the livelong night. The livelong night may be understood through the words of Lady Macbeth. Oh, never shall sun that morrow see. And we only see the sun in the day after the death of Macbeth, mean to say the end of Saturn, so covers the whole prehistoric period and our 6,000 years and the future up to the end of Saturn, according to the time of the book of Revelation. We now in the 20th century hear the clamor too. If we take the theatrical history, in 1559, by royal proclamation, Elizabeth ordered the licensors of the plays to permit none to be played wherein either matters of religion or the governance of the estate of the commonweal shall be handled or treated. What is not possible for a creator like Shakespeare? If he is provoked, he would teach them their defeat to any king or kingdom. Who could challenge wisdom, particularly in the hands of a creator? I quote from the play. And prophesying with accents terrible of dire combustion and confused events, new hatchet to the awful tide. Shakespeare had worked a lot to dramatize the fall of Saturn. The evil is new hatched, the time woeful time of dire combustion and confused events. I quote, Christian philosophy, says Walter C. Curry, recognizes two tragedies of cosmic importance. One, the fall of Lucifer, and a third part of the angelic host who rebelled against God and were cast out. And two, the fall of Adam, who was originally endowed with perfection and freedom, but who set his will against God's will and so brought sin and limited freedom upon mankind. The fall of Macbeth draws on the combined power, those of Lucifer and Adam. And one more, of course, since it is his own. Walter C. Curry. Adam. It is difficult to say that something is like Adam in Banco, because Shakespeare said it like that. Yet it is highly impossible to say Shakespeare sketched the character without the thought of Adam. Shakespeare's concentration was basically set on the fall of Saturn, and a writer of Shakespeare's worth cannot at all neglect. We can observe Adam too. God said, "Let us make in our image." Genesis. And in God's image he created him. I quote. And Jehovah God proceeded to form the man out of the dust from the ground and to blow into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man came to be a living soul. This is the perfect Adam. Banco is Duncan's cousin Chunk. I quote from the play. I have begun to plant thee and will labor to make thee full of growing, noble Banco, that hath no less deserved, nor must be known, no less to have done so. Let me unfold thee, and hold thee to my heart. The word less indicates difference between Satan and Adam. Man is lesser than an angel, and his unfolding perhaps may mean the making him with the dust and blow into his nostrils and the breath of life, or the abundant love God had shown to Adam. And Adam's future relation too is indicated. There if I grow, the harvest is your own. God, after Adam's eating the fruit, had held him in his abundant love, and blessed him and his children with many blessings. I quote from the play. king. The castle hath a pleasant seat. The air nimbly and sweetly recommends itself unto our gentle senses. Banco. This gust of summer, the temple haunting marlet, does approve by his loud machinery that the heaven's breath smells wooingly here. No jetty phrase butters, nor coggin of vantage, but this bird has made his pendant bed and procreant cradle, where they must breed and haunt. I have observed, the air is delicate. I quote, this short dialogue between Duncan and Banco has always appeared to me striking instance of what in painting is termed repose. Sir J. Reynolds. I particularly remember the scene of Bible. I quote, and Jehovah God proceeded to take the man and settle him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and take care of it. And I quote, now Jehovah God was forming from the ground every wild beast of the field and flying creature of the heaven, and he began bringing them to the man to see what he would call each one, and whatsoever the man would call it, each living soul, that was its name. So the man was calling the name of all the domestic animals and of the flying creatures of the heavens and of every wild beast of the field. The whole universe should be watching the overflowing abundance of God's love and the true joy of his child Adam. The creation of Eve is dimly suggested. The next act of God after Adam's creation was Eve. Here Shakespeare had no time or business to think of. And this sentence made for Lady Macbeth seems to be serving the purpose of Eve's creation too. See, our honored hostess, the love that follows us sometimes is our trouble, which still we thank as love. Herein I teach you how you shall bid God yield us. Here you shall bid God yield us for our pain, and thanks us for your trouble. I quote, this passage is undoubtedly obscure, Stevens. See, our honored hostess indicates the creation of Eve. The way her being created is indicated in the meaningful sounds uttered by Duncan. I quote from the Bible. And Jehovah God proceeded to build the rib that he had taken from the man into a woman, and to bring her to the man. And I quote, the love that follows her, I feel, had an underlined picture of, I quote from the Bible. The man said, this is at last bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one will be called woman, because from man this one was taken. And to this special following, as the writer in the Bible, I quote, for this reason a man will leave his father and his mother and will stick to his wife, and the two will be one flesh. It also reminds me the words of God to Eve. And your craving will be for your husband, and he will dominate you. And I quote, sometimes is our trouble may be referred to a parallel to, I quote, so she began taking of its fruit and eating it. And I quote, afterward she gave some also to her husband when with her, and he began eating of it. This is the fall, and sin has entered into Adam and Eve only because of Eve, which still we thank as love, is perhaps satirically interpreted as the art of Shakespeare by pegging the meaning of the words of God, and your craving will be for your husband, and he will dominate you. Yeah, it is not the only thing man wants from his woman. Here I teach you, indicates the blessings and prophecies of God towards her seed, and how you shall bid God yield refers to the prophecy of Messiah, the one who will bruise you in the head. The pains indicate. To the woman he said, I shall greatly increase the pain of your pregnancy. In birth pangs you will bring forth children. Perhaps may also mean pains in full sense of 6,000 years sorrow and suffering of humanhood. Thank us for your trouble is because the trouble brings forth life, and for it she should be happy and thank God. I quote, in time she gave birth to Cain and said, I have produced a man with the aid of Jehovah. The witches of the first sin had something to do with Macbeth, and they ought to meet Macbeth. And when they meet Macbeth, the current of the witches had already flowing around the soul of Macbeth, and they all belong to one school. He commands them. Banquo saw them first and spoke, and the witches respond, Macbeth first and Banquo next. Banquo says, have we eaten on the insane root that takes the reason prisoner? When Adam and Eve did eat the fruit of the forbidden tree, then the eyes of both of them became opened and they began to realize that they were naked. Hence they sewed fig leaves together and made lion covering themselves. Shakespeare presented it in the reverse. Yet for the true meaning it is positive, but the meaning is perceivable to the mind. Lesser than Macbeth and greater. Not so happy, yet much happier. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. Lesser than Macbeth indicates Adam is lesser than Satan in their creation, and greater tells Satan has no salvation, but Adam had. 2. Adam is blessed and is the father of all. Not so happy, Jehovah said to Adam, cursed is the ground on your account. In pain you will eat its produce all the days of your life, and thorns and thistles it will grow for you, and you must eat the vegetation of the field. In the sweat of your face you will eat bread until you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. Yet much happier is very apt because, and Jehovah God proceeded to make long garments of skin for Adam and for his wife, and to clothe them. What else happiness is there for man to dream? And 2. God blessed them. Thou be none is, through one man Adam sin entered into the world and death. Through sin, and thus death spread to all men because they had all sinned. And death ruled as king from Adam down. Though thou shalt get kings, is that Jehovah in his wisdom and love provided a second man, the last Adam, who is the King of Kings, the Lord Jesus Christ. By means of this obedient Son of God, the way was opened up, whereby the descendants of disobedient first man Adam could regain paradise and everlasting life. The church or congregation of Christ even gaining heavenly life. Macbeth's act is more than bloody deed. And for Banquo, Adam's fall, most bloody piece of work. And Banquo is at, in the great hand of God I stand. Macbeth says, blood is stopped, and every source of it is stopped. But Banquo, against the undivulged pretense, I fight of treasonous malice. Undivulged pretense is what I think the serpent deceiving Eve look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. I fight of treasonous malice is what the last Adam Jesus Christ's duty is. It is most like the sovereignty fell upon Macbeth. Through these words one classification is hinted. The sovereignty in its truest sense only belongs to God Jehovah, and the sovereignty of Satan is not like that. This is clearly understood in Satan's dealing with Jehovah in case of Job. Thou hast it now, King Cawdor Glemis, is like the Saturn, the devil, the oriental serpent. The apostle Paul associates Saturn with the wicked spirit forces in the heavenly planes and speaks of them as the world ruler of this darkness, as a governing force in the invisible realm immediately above the earth. He is the ruler of the authority of the air. In Revelation, he is shown to be the one misleading the entire inhabited earth. The Apostle John said that the whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one. He is therefore the ruler of this world. This is the first phase of the drama as well as the Bible. Shakespeare took 1/3 of drama, whereas in the Bible, all this was totally presented in mere 3 chapters. First 3 chapters, good and bad are presented. And now the bad has its lead. Second phase, last Adam. I quote, "The third act usually contains the crisis. May it not reasonably supposed that the first murder is fraught with fullest consequences? Hardly. It is only the second murder that Macbeth verges on frenzy. Only here does he suffer the impulse of that fearful law of punishment which leads him headlong downward. This turn is the most powerful in the drama and is therefore introduced in the third act. Here we reach the parting of the ways," unquote. It is so for a true critic. But what really appeals us is the atmosphere around the first murder. Even Shakespeare's concentration was totally devoted to fill the reader's brain with the poetic fury of the first dark crime. The effect produced on the soul of the devil's brainchild Macbeth is different with the two murders. The first one on the very conscience and the next one on the very existence. If questioned which could be the major threat to Macbeth, it may differ according to the reader's view about the very theme of the play, and majority would turn to the first as it actually looks. But what a few critics noticed is different, and their knowledge comes from the very bottom of the true foundation of the murders. Now I turn to proceed in my work, hoping a better clarification. What really is the crisis in Satan's life? Losing the grace? Perhaps not, because Satan further started his venture and succeeded in making Adam and Eve fall. Then death came into existence, which is the ever biggest victory to Satan, and death is the sole light of his darkest empire. But when death is wiped out by the death of Jesus Christ, the ending of Satan's kingdom has started. This is the crisis in Satan's life, and what is left is but, "They have tied me to a stake. I can't fly, but bear like I must fight the course." The third act is but the last Adam, Jesus, wiping out the death through his death. Banquo plays the last Adam's role. This Jesus, last Adam, is the son of Mary, and Macbeth also plays the role of Jesus who belongs to heaven. But that myself should be the root and father of many kings, if there comes truth from them. It seems Banquo was under the influence of some magical spell, because his further concrete and prudent understanding about the witches differs. I quote, "And oftentimes, to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truth, win us with honest trifles, betray us in deepest consequence." This is what Banquo's wisdom tells, and it is unchangeable as with the tricks of a character interpretation. Even if we observe the many psychological changes at the time of the witch's predictions, only these lines are uttered with his true understanding and through the majesty of a human being. The above lines, "Myself shall be the root," had a definite purpose. The word root was not used by the witches. Here it parallels God's promise and prophecies concerning the seed of woman. If there comes truth from them, serves the true purpose of the prophecies pertaining to the Savior, Jesus Christ, the King of Jews. From them is not from the witches, but from the kings that come from Banquo. Jesus Christ is full of undeserved kindness and truth. While on earth, he always spoke the truth as he had received it from his Father. He committed no sin, nor was deception found in his mouth. Jesus represented things as they really were. Besides being full of truth, Jesus was himself the truth, and truth came through him. He declared, "I am the way, and the truth, and the life." And the Apostle John wrote, "The law was given through Moses, and the undeserved kindness and the truth came to be through Jesus Christ." This Jesus is the root's truth, who is the last Adam, and all things unbecoming. About the kingship of Macbeth, Banquo says, "Yet it was said, I should not stand in the posterity." This too stresses on the surety of the purpose, how Satan failed to prevent the seed of woman. Even Jesus was encountered by Satan in the wilderness, where Satan approached him with 3 different strong temptations in vain. Banquo says, "My oracles set me up in hope," shows the importance of the observation of the prophecies in the Bible. A lady, if he had been forgotten, it had been a gap in our great feast, and all things unbecoming. This small passage indicates the importance of Jesus and his mission. Jehovah God saw fit to make his firstborn son the central or key figure in the outworking of all his purposes, the focal point on which the light of all prophecies would concentrate and from which their light would radiate, the solution to all the problems that Satan's rebellion had raised, and the foundation upon which God would build all future arrangements for the eternal good of his universal family in heaven and earth. Tonight, we hold a solemn supper, sir, and I will request your presence. Banquo, let your highness command upon me, to the which my duties are with a most dissolved tie forever knit. Because of the vital role he thus plays in God's purpose, Jesus could say rightly and without exaggeration, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." If Jesus fails, all things unbecoming, or if Jesus is forgotten, all things unbecoming too. The word "all things" is made out of the Bible only. I quote from the text. Macbeth, tonight we hold a solemn supper, sir, and I will request your presence. Banquo, let your highness command upon me, to which my duties are with a most indissoluble tie forever knit. The meaning springs forth even before the lines are fully read, and the expressions are totally different. Macbeth's caricature of his soul is seen without any majesty, and that too with a confident defeat. Altogether a pale and inferior voice. But Banquo dominates here with wonderful values of a human being. And this piece of action is amazing to the mind's eye. These 2 dialogues have nothing to do with the other, and the expressions are differing extremely, one being the weakest and the other the strongest, endowed with wisdom and dedication. About the using of the word "I will," Harry Rowe says, I quote, "As Macbeth is here speaking of the present and not of the future time, I do not know well why learned editors should continue to print "I will" or "I." According to my understanding, though it is not so easy to follow, these words of Macbeth shows the effect of Satan's tempting Jesus in vain. I quote from the Bible. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit up into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, then he felt hungry. Also the tempter came and said to him, "If you are a son of God, tell these stones to become loaves of bread." But in reply he said, "It is written, man must live not on bread alone, but on every utterance coming forth through Jehovah's mouth." And then the devil took him along into the holy city, and he stationed him upon the battlement of the temple and said to him, "If you are a son of God, hurl yourself down, for it is written, he will give his angels a charge concerning you, and they will carry you on their head, that you may at no time strike your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, you must not put Jehovah your God to the test." Again the devil took him along to an unusually high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory. And he said to him, "All these things I will give you, if you fall down and do an act of worship to me." Then Jesus said to him, "Go away, Satan, for it is written, 'It is Jehovah your God you must worship, and it is to him alone you must render sacred service.'" Then the devil left him, and look, angels came and began to minister him. What all these passages to do with the words of Macbeth? Yes, it has. Secrets of Shakespeare are such. The note of failure of Satan in tempting Jesus has embodied in the words of Macbeth. And "I will" represents that no time Satan succeeded, and all expected to take place in future, and all failed, and the future tense stood still. And two, the above passage shows us the smell or strength of the duty of Jesus with a most indissoluble tie forever knit. His words remind us of the prayers of Jesus to Jehovah God before he was really taken into the hands of the soldiers. The conversation between Macbeth and Banquo. Macbeth seems scared of Banquo, and the natural inferiority of Macbeth further made meek and weak with that of Banquo's outright domination. Only in the last line, Macbeth struggles to show his artificial mastery or command. I quote, "And so I do command you to their backs." I quote from the text, "Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. It is much he dares, and to the dauntless temper of his mind he hath a wisdom, and doth guide his valor to act in safety. There is none but he, whose being I do fear, and under him my genius is rebuked, as it was said." Many qualities of Banquo are showed. 1. Royalty of nature. 2. Much he dares. 3. Dauntless temper of his mind. 4. A wisdom. 5. None but he. 6. Under him my genius is rebuked. 7. As it was said. Let us not give way to think how appropriate the way Macbeth speaks. Many critics have raised their swords. Anyway, the importance of Banquo has been increasing too rapidly, that too through the mouth of Macbeth. In fact, these qualities are of Jesus. Following his resurrection, Jesus informed his disciples, "All authority has been given me in heaven and the earth," thereby showing that he heads a government of universal domain. The Apostle Paul made clear that Jesus' Father has left nothing that is not subject to him, Jesus, with the evident exception of the one who subjected all things to him. His name represents God's appointed ruler, the King of Kings, to whom all nations should bow down in submission to experience destruction. Revelations. Great courage, manliness, and strength are evident throughout his ministry. Like Joshua, King David, and others, Jesus was a fighter for God's cause and on behalf of lovers of righteousness. As the promised seed, he had to face the enmity of the seed of the serpent, doing battle with them. He waged offensive warfare against the demons and their influence on man's minds and hearts. Jesus thoroughly defeated the hypocritical religious leaders in a series of verbal encounters. He wielded the sword of the Spirit, God's word, with strength, perfect control, and strategy, cutting through the subtle arguments and tramp-like questions that his opposers advanced, pulling them in a corner or on the horns of a dilemma. He fearlessly exposed them for what they were. Teachers of human tradition and formalism, blind leaders, a generation of vipers, and children of God's adversary, the prince of the demons and the murderous liar. In all this, Jesus never failed, hardly, sought no trouble, and avoided unnecessary danger. I quote, "Banquo's murder sounds incredible, because such negotiations with assassins have been unknown to us." Hunter. The plotting of the murder in this way looks artificial as well as awkward to any common critic. Macbeth had no sons, and Banquo's sons would naturally inherit from their father, who is of the royal house. If we continue to find a better meaning, exercising faith in Shakespeare's genius, there should be undoubtedly a great need. Yes, all this is, but Shakespeare tried to show Jesus' death was plotted. Macbeth says to the murderers, "Are you so gospelled to pray for this good man?" Reveals the power of the gospel of Christ and his great influence in the people. With this single line, we at once feel the touch of Christ's 3.5 years life and his works and all that we need to know about him. About the murderers, Clarendon says, I quote, "These two are not assassins by profession, as is clear by what follows, but soldiers whose fortune, according to Macbeth, have been ruined by Banquo's influence." Again I quote, "The murderers are former victims of Macbeth's own, whom he has now induced to believe that they owe their wrongs to Banquo." E.K. Chambers. To call these as high priests might not be appropriate, yet it is clear this parallels the plotting of Jesus' death. I quote from the Bible. "Then the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders of the people assembled at the place of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and plotted to take Jesus by trickery and kill him." A small wonder is that, even in his speeches to the murderers, Macbeth ironically shows the nature of Jesus' death, whose executions take your enemy off. The enemy is but Satan, Macbeth, who were our health but sickly in his life, which in his death were perfect. These lives belongs to Christ. It is only in his death sickness and death were wiped out and made perfect. I think Shakespeare was trying to give as many details as possible about Jesus and his death. Perfect spy of the time. I quote from the text. "I will advise you to plant yourselves acquainted with the perfect spy of the time." In fact, there is no need at all for these two lines' existence. Advice necessary, plant particularly, another to acquaint, spy to spy, and a great spy of the time to lie in ambush. These two lines are too much discussed by the critics. Johnson says, I quote, "What is meant by these passages will be found difficult to explain." M. Mason says, "The meaning of the passage is, I will let you know by the person best informed of the exact moment in which the business is to be done." The spy should be Judas, who was listed among the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ, called Iscariot, and a traitor. This Judas agrees with the chief priest to betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. As it was difficult to identify Jesus among his disciples, the high priest needed someone to show him. But here Banquo, the well-known one, coming to the castle in the late night, it looks ridiculous to appoint a perfect spy of the time and to show where to plant. The spy of the time indicates the importance of the Judas betrayal and the prophetic writing of it by King David. I quote from the Bible. "Even my own familiar friend, in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me." To plant reminds us the way how the multitude with swords and clubs come from the chief priest and elders of the people and followed Judas to lay their hands on Jesus. Banquo recognizes this perfect spy and says, "Slave?" So it does only mean this slave should have recently become so, or else he need not say so. Yes, it was so with Judas. I quote from the Bible. "When Jesus had said these things, he was troubled in spirit and terrified and said, 'Most assuredly I say to you, one of you will betray me. It is he to whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it.'" The reason for the controversy of the third murderer, whether he is Macbeth or the spy, lies here. Did he not choose you, the 12, and one of you is a devil. I quote from the text, almost a mile. But he does usually, so all men do, from hence to the palace gate, make it their walk. This passage slightly represents the green place called Gethsemane, where Jesus was taken into the hands of the soldiers. And it is he. Looks like the kiss of Judah. Whomever I kiss, he is the one, says. And the last dialogue, who did strike out the light? Is it not possible in my way to find some deep voice coming out of the very bottom of the heart when uttering these words? We cannot suppose. But if the light is Christ, it can be so. Judah saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. And they, chief priests, said, what is that to us? You see to it. Then he threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went and hanged himself. Please go to the next half of the 5th chapter. Shakespeare's mind behind Macbeth, chapter 5, part 2, the plot, the Bible and Macbeth.